Hi, my name's Dave. Welcome to LaBelle UK. Today we're going to look at the Eterna 90 sliding door system and how to install it.
Hi, my name's Jodie. In today's video we're going to talk you through the basic setup of the Eterna 90 sliding door, basic programming settings and the basic setup of the safety sensors. So welcome to the Eterna 90. A few features for this sliding door is that it has a brushless motor, 24 volt brushless motor with a power supply for external accessories of 24 volt. The power consumption based on 180 kilo door leaf is 100 watts in continuous opening and closing and 6 watts in standby. The 90 motor will carry a single door leaf of 130 kilo and a bipart 90 kilo per leaf. The compact dimensions of the Eterna 90 are 100mm high and 135mm deep. Next, we're going to talk you through the basic installation of the Eterna 90.
When you receive your Eterna 90, unwrap it from the packaging, remove the cover and please remove the carriage wheels. The reason for this is that you're next going to drill the transom. The transom hole centres where you're going to drill are 300mm centres along these two lines, offset. This will give you firm fixings on your bulkhead, but it's mostly important because when you've got swarf in that transom, you'll get pickup on your carriage wheels if you're left inside. So you'd have to clean all the carriage wheels. It's always best to remove them. So when you've got your pre-drilled transom, you've got to think about mounting it on your bulkhead. Whereabouts do you mount it on your bulkhead? That's quite easy to work out. You get your overall height of the door, including the brush strip, to the top of the top rail hanger. Normally, that sits on top of the door leaf because you've got a solid top door leaf. So on this demonstration unit, let's just say that this door leaf is 2 meters high. You add 30mm to that. So what you'll do is from the finished floor level or the threshold, you measure up either side, there and there. You measure up either side, 2 meters 30. Put a pencil mark there, and that's where the bottom of the transit will sit. This will give you, on your carriage wheel adjustment, 15mm up and 4mm down. Please make sure that when you do install it, that the transom is perfectly horizontal. So when you've got your carriage wheels attached to your door leaf through the top hanger, adjust them by means of the nut. That nut will take it up 15mm or down 4mm. Get it so that the door slides freely across the floor, it's not dragging on the floor. You don't put any strain on the motor or anything like that. Be careful of the back edge. Make sure you get your finger trap in there, which is 8mm or less, and also of the front edge, which is 25mm. Please make sure that the door conforms to EN 16005 when you've set it up. When you're happy with your door leaf and it conforms to 16005 and it moves freely, next we'll move on to the control panel. For the control panel, all you need to do is put the mains power lead in, the battery just pushed in slightly, the motor lead in, and the programmer lead in. Ignore all the cables up here because this is our demonstration unit. You would have those plugged in.
Okay, so when we're doing our initial setup of the Eterna 90, we want to start with the door in a position of around 50mm from the jamb. If you're working on a bipart, you want to do this 50mm per door leaf, so a total of around 100mm. This is because with the Eterna control panel, when it's doing its initial setup, it will find its own direction of travel, so it will either slide towards the jamb or away from the jamb. If it starts to slide away from the jamb, the motor will kick in and reverse and it will start to slide towards the jamb if it's not finding any resistance when it's sliding back. Once it does slide towards the jamb and it finds its 0 point, its datum point, it will do a slow open and close cycle, and this will be its initial setup complete. So when you do your initial setup, if you first plug in your programmer, the doors will automatically acquire. You can tell this has happened by the padlock in number 1. It will take you straight into the two-way. From here, what you want to do is press and hold the set button. And this will take you into the 8 boxes. Now we're going to use this box here, which is the setup, and this is the only point that you'll ever go into this function. Enter into that by pressing the snowflake. It'll ask you to enter a password. They come factory set as all A's. And it will go into setup mode. So what you want to do is always do a full setup by pressing the F1. Now we can tell we're in the setup menu here by the S's down the one side. And what you want to do is make sure you follow the middle line here. So this is always where you're selected. So this first option is asking us what automation we're using. So in this particular demonstration, we're using Eterna 90. So we're just going to use the F3 button at the top to change that to on. We're going to move down to SO2 by using the snowflake. Now we're not using electric lock on this setup. If you are going to add one in later, you do that at a later stage. So for now, we're just going to leave that as off. Move down to SO3. We're not using a double electric lock, so we're going to leave that as off. Move down to SO4. Now because we plugged our battery pack in, we're going to turn this to on. Move down to SO5. At this point in the initial setup, we won't be using safety sensors, so we're going to leave all of these off for now and we'll go back in and turn them on at a later stage. So SO5, SO6, SO7 and SO8, we want to make sure are all turned off. Into S12, sorry. So this is an open input contact selection, and what this is for if you're using a fire alarm. Now our circuits are always normally open unless you're adding a fire alarm, but I would recommend that you do this at a later stage. So for now we're going to leave this as a normally open circuit. Down to S13, we're not using the interlock, so we'll leave that as a normally open circuit. S14, so your mechanical selector here is your 5-position key switch that comes as standard with the units. At this stage we haven't got that connected, so we're going to leave that as off. If you could press the snowflake into OK, this will ask you to run your initial setup. The unit will beep 4 times and start its initial setup. So once the door's done its initial setup, we're now going to go in and turn the battery on to conform with the regulations for monitoring the battery. So to do this, we're going to move across, pressing F1 across the menu to the second box, which is switches and potentiometers. We're going to enter in using the snowflake. Now in this menu, you've got all your F's going up on F2 and all your P's coming down on the snowflake. So we're going to go up to FO6. Now we switched the battery on in the initial setup, so that's turned on. Into FO7. In the absence of power supply, the door opens and stays open with the battery. We want to turn this on by using F3. And then up into F8. When the battery is empty or fails, the door opens and stays open is what we want. So we're going to turn this on by using F3. Now we can test this is working correctly by unplugging the battery, and the door will open on the 240 volt power and stay open. So the next thing you want to do is actually go into the settings of the door itself. Now at any point to activate the door, if you press this F1 button here, that will open and close the door. So you can check the settings that you've just put in to make sure they're the right ones before moving on to the next thing. So we're going to go down into the P's using the snowflake. The first one we want to control is the opening speed of the doors. Now every door is going to be different on how fast it opens and closes. We can't tell you the standard for this. You can control it by pressing F3 to take it up and F1 to take it down. And if you do want to check it at any time, go back to your main menu using the F2 and you can open the door using the F1 button. Once you've set your opening speed on P1, you go down to P2 and do the same for the closing speed. The other thing that we want you to set up at this stage will be in P5. And this is the pause time, so this is how long the door is standing open for. The standard setup, usually we recommend about 12%, which is around 5 seconds. Once you've wired in your mechanical selector, your 5-position key switch that comes with the unit, to switch this on in the programmer, we're going to go on F2 into FO1, and we want to turn this on to on. And that will enable the key switch. So if you're choosing to use an electric lock, you want to plug this into the lock 1 part of the board. Once you've done this, to turn the electric lock on, we're going to go into FO3 on the programmer. Now you're going to select whether you have a fail secure lock or a fail safe lock. When using a fail secure lock, Always make sure that you've got a manual override fitted as well. When the lock is turned on, the lock will only work when the key switch is turned into the night lock position. If you want the door to lock every time the door closes, i.e. for access control setups, you want to turn on the bank function. To do this, we're going to go down to FO2 and select on. So once the fire alarm's wired in, we now need to change the circuit to a normally closed circuit. To do this, we're going to go into F23. You can hold that down to skip through faster. And we're going to change it from a normally open circuit into a normally closed circuit by switching this off by using the F1 button.
On our demonstration unit today, we've got the Optex OEHT safety sensors. It's a dual sensor, which means to say it puts an activation input out and a safety circuit out. So there's 5 beams going out of this axis T. The first 3 beams of activation, and beams, the middle beam and 2 and 1 are safety. What we do for the basic setup is put dip switches 1, 9 and 12 on. No, in our case it's 13. This is your basic setup, just to get you started. So dip switch 1 is a middle sensitivity. Dip switch 9 is to stop ghosting, so you might get a little bit of rattle on the canopy, or you might get something blowing on the floor, and it could give a false activation. And dip switch 12 is the test. So this sensor itself will measure from 3 meters off the floor. It won't go any further than that. If you need a different sensor for that, we've got those sensors. They're axis joules. To adjust just the first beam closest to the door, you put dip switch 16 on for your setup. That puts 1 beam closest to the door itself or the moving part. Adjust the outer ring anti-clockwise to bring that closer into the door itself. You need to get that beam with the Optex beam finder no more than 50 mil away from the door or slightly closer.
So once your safety sensors have been connected, to turn them on in the programmer, you're going to start with F12, turn this on using the F3, up to F13, we want to turn that on. F14 for your side screens, we'll turn that on. If you have a bipart and you have a second side screen, you'll turn that also on in F15. We don't have one on this demonstration, so I'm going to skip through that. F16 for your testing of the sensors to conform with the regulations, we'll turn that on. And F17 for the test of the side screens.
Once you're happy that you've got your beam set correctly, closest to the door, within 50 mil, knock dip switch 16 off, which is your initial setup. Press and hold the function switch till the green light goes off and step out. When the green light is solid green, it's set up. Repeat this process to the external safety sensor. On our demonstration unit, we've got the side screen safety, which is an Optex Presence TN. Before you start adjusting the Presence TN, make sure you've got the door in the fully open position and your beam finder on the floor, which is the Optex beam finder. Make sure you've got the beam finder within 50 mil or less of the actual door itself. And then switch on dip switches 1, which is middle sensitivity, dip switches 8, which is a test, and dip switches 16. 16 is the test for the actual sensor itself. It puts 1 beam closest to the door. Adjust the outer pink rim of the actual circle anti-clockwise, and it adjusts the rake of the beam towards the door. When your beam finder starts to flash, you then take it back a little notch until it stops flashing. That means to say that that beam's set up to the beam finder. Then knock number 16 off. But more importantly now, because you've got the Presence TN and the Axis T so close together, they use the same frequency settings. So you would probably have to adjust the frequency setting 5 or 6, different to the Axis T. So we're going to put number 5 on. Okay, so it's a different frequency to the Axis T, so it can't interfere with one another. And then press the function switch. Wait for the green light to go off, step out, go solid green, set up. When you're happy with your side screen safety sensor, with the setup of it after you've used your beam finder, your next stage is to test the actual beam itself with a test box to make sure that you've got it set correctly. This is a test box to the industry standard EN16005. You place it in the opening part of the door, and you'll notice that the beam closest to the door, the light starts to flash red to say that it's in the actual curtain of the door. We shall now activate the door, and the door will creep open. Once you've done your side screen safety sensors with your test box, you need to do your threshold safety sensors. So basically, when you put your test box in position, the door should not close on the test box. Activate the door. Test box is in position. You notice that the red light is flashing. That means to say the actual test box is in the safety curtain. And the door won't shut for 30 seconds as it's on a presence timer. Once you perform the actual test with the test box on the internal sensor, please perform the same test on the external sensor, giving full safety on the actual door leaf itself. If you need to do any further adjustments to the sensors, please refer to the Optex manual for these sensors. Thank you.
So for fault finding, one of the useful tools that you can use is our diagnostic tool. Start with the programmer in two-way, press and hold F2, and this will bring up these boxes. This box here is your internal radar, this is your external radar, your start input, your fire alarm contact, your internal threshold sensor, your external threshold sensor, your presence and side screen sensor for a single, and if you're using a bipart, your second side screen sensor. Now if one of these boxes is lit up, which I will do now, this will indicate that this terminal input is receiving a signal. Thank you for watching this training video on the Eterna 90. If you have any further questions, please get in touch.
Thank you.